mistakes that I see students make is when they don't entirely understand the question. And this is such a massive shame because students can write fantastic work, but if they haven't quite understood the key words that are in the question they're being asked, their assignment task or whatever it might be, then they're just not quite getting it. And then they're not getting the marks. This could be you. You might have done this. You might do this in the future. So in today's video, I am going to introduce you to the key verbs. And I have 19 academic verbs that you really need to know, if you're a student, what they mean. So let's get right into it. And if any of these are new to you, I recommend you write them down, keep a record of them, watch this video again, whatever you like. So before we get into it and I tell you what these verbs are, we need to understand what a verb is. So a verb is basically a doing word. So I'm talking, I'm jumping, I'm running. You're doing something. And in an academic sense, this might mean describing or listing or evaluating or analysing. And all of these words mean something slightly different. So the important thing is that you understand what these words mean so that when you write your assignment or you answer your essay question or whatever it might be, you're doing it right. If you're being asked to analyse, you are separating something into parts and discussing, examining and interpreting each part. I often describe analyse because this is something that a lot of students do struggle with. I often describe it as, think about your everyday life. Let's say you are analysing what somebody is wearing. You might think, oh, I don't like the fabric on their top, or, oh, that's a really sensible choice of footwear because it's a bit icy outside and that's really, grippy. Or it's really sunny and they've got a hat, but that hat doesn't match their outfit. We can all do it. We can all analyse stuff. We look at the good stuff, the bad stuff. We rip it apart. We think about why. We link it to other parts in our life. These are often the higher level questions that will get you the higher grades. So analyse is often the most tricky one for many students to get, but once you get it, you are on the road to success. Classify. To put something into a category with things of a similar type. You might need to defend or explain how you arrived at a category and how one category differs from another. Compare. To examine two or more things and show their similarities and their differences. Compare and contrast is a term that you will often come across in your academic studies, and it literally means saying what's the same, what's different. And if you want to go a bit further and analyse that, you can look at the whys and hows and go a bit more in depth. Criticise. To analyse and make reasoned judgments. These could be positive, negative, or both about something. And a lot of us think that criticise is always negative because in our day-to-day life, we tend to associate the term criticism with saying bad things. But actually, you can criticise things in a positive way too. Define. To give the meaning of a term or concept, or to express the essential nature of something. A definition may be simple or complex. The available techniques for definition include examples, synonyms, antonyms, etymology, or dictionary definitions. And this is something that comes up a lot in academic work. You might not always be asked to define something explicitly, but it is often a good idea to do that. And when I write essays or reports, or even when I do presentations, I will often start by giving a definition of the key concepts that I am addressing in that piece of work. So let's say, for example, I am analysing the ethics of dark tourism. So is dark tourism, visiting sites that are associated with death and sadness, is it right or is it wrong? And if I am doing that, I would probably start off my work by providing a definition of dark tourism. If I want to get those higher grades, I will not only give one definition, but if there are a few, I will give a few. I will say which ones are best, which ones are not. And my definitions will not come from the dictionary, not usually. They will come from academic sources. So ideally, key authors who have written about that subject. This has probably been written in a journal article or in a book. Avoid Wikipedia, avoid dictionary.com and those kinds of websites is it doesn't look great, it doesn't look like you've done the research, and you're probably not going to get the best grades for that. And if you want to know a bit more about which sources are good and which sources are not, I do have a video on that and I will link to it at the end. Discuss. This is to offer the pros and the cons of an issue. Evaluate. To give a reasoned opinion about something, usually in terms of the merit of a particular work, idea or person. And evaluate is another really common one that you have probably come across before. So if we are evaluating something, we're looking at what's good about it, what's not good about it, but we're maybe not going into quite the same level of depth as we do with an analyse question. So if you're doing a piece of work and it's marked pass merit distinction, evaluate might be more of a merit kind of level, whereas analyse is likely to be more of a distinction kind of level. Hopefully that puts it into context a little bit for you. Explain. To describe how something functions, to give a definition for something. Again, explain is a really common academic verb that you will come across in your studies. And if we are explaining something, we're saying, this is what it is, this is how it works. We're not necessarily looking at the pros and cons, we're not evaluating it, we're not analysing it, we're not going to that level of depth, but we are providing a thorough explanation of the issue or the concept or the thing. Identify. To indicate what a thing is, what it's composed of, or when or where it occurred. Quite similar to describe. Now, identify is often a lower level question. Sometimes you might need to identify something before you can evaluate it or analyse it. And that's absolutely normal. But sometimes, especially if you are studying your subject at a lower level, or if you are studying it at a basic level, you might just be asked to identify. So this could be creating a list, this could be identifying certain things or characteristics. So for example, you might be asked to identify, I'll stick with my example of dark tourism, identify 10 dark tourism sites around the world. To which you might say Auschwitz, Chernobyl, Orodosser, Glane, lots of other dark tourism sites, and literally just listing them. That is identify. Interpret. To comment upon something or to explain its meaning. And an easy way to understand this one is to think about an interpreter. An interpreter is somebody who listens to words and they try to make meaning of it. They make an understanding of it. Actually, it might not always be words, but they're trying to make that understanding of it. So if we're interpreting something, we're taking it and we are writing or explaining what that means. Outline. This is to give a historical overview of something or to describe its main ideas or parts. Persuade. To urge or influence the audience to embrace your point of view. To argue specific points supported by evidence and relevant details. So let's say I'm asked to do an assignment to, perhaps my essay question is persuade the local people in, Uganda that tourism is a positive thing. So if that was my question, I would want to have a very one-sided argument, or my argument is likely to be quite one-sided anyway, and I would want to talk about all the good things for the local people and why they should embrace tourism and how that will benefit them. Prove. To argue a position by supporting your claims with factual evidence. State. To explain something clearly and concisely. Summarise. To give the main points or highlights of a longer piece of work. To give a condensed amount of an article, story or event. And summarise is something that a lot of students actually sometimes struggle with because it often involves us reading lots of information or absorbing lots of information through whatever means that might be and consuming that, digesting that, and then re-putting that out there in a more succinct fashion. So let's say I read a whole book and I have to summarise what that book is about. I have to have really understood everything. So it's really important if you're summarising that you understand what it is you're summarising really well. And synthesise. This is to blend together research or information from several sources and put that into one cohesive discussion. So hopefully all of those made sense to you. And what I recommend you do if you are a student, some of these might be new, some might not, but I recommend that it's a good idea to keep a copy of all of these academic verbs stored somewhere. So I will put the link here to the full article on my website that outlines all of these words, so you can print it off, you can stick it on your wall, you can save it on your computer, whatever you want to do. But it's a really handy resource for when you do get that assignment question in the future and you're not 100% sure, perhaps, just revisit it and hopefully all will become simple and you will get top marks. If you found this video helpful, I have lots of other helpful videos that you can watch too, and don't forget to subscribe.